Hello again, welcome. In this video, we're going to have a detailed look at the WebMaker Studio, which is a graphical drag-and-drop design environment for creating web applications. With me today is Gerard, one of our senior engineers, who is going to introduce you to all the cool parts of the studio and how best to utilize WebMaker to accelerate your web application design and development tasks. So, without further ado, it's over to you, Gerard.
Okay, so once you've got it all installed and running, you should see a screen like this when you first start it up. So the idea here is splash screen, help you get started. So we've got links here to these videos. You can click through to the community forum and also to documentation, so if you ever need some help or whatever around anything. But when you're first getting started, the main thing maybe that you're going to want to do at this point is create a project. So we've got a link right at the start here to bring up our new project screen to help you get started. So when you're dealing with projects in WebMaker, we always create one from a template. So you're never starting from a completely blank page. By default, you see here we have 4 system templates that are provided for you. This base one is quite simple. So if you want to do your own custom thing, that might be where you want to start. Or you can look at some of these other ones here, which show more examples of types of projects you can create. Then the second half of this screen will grow as you start using the tool. And this is showing all of your project templates. By default, every project that you create will become a template and will appear in this list. So if you've ever found I've done something similar before, I want to start from that, you'll easily be able to click on it here and create a new project from those. And likewise, if you don't want some of your projects to appear, you can easily remove them from this screen. In this sort of getting started process, I'm just going to pick this contacts template as a good example just to show you around the tool. So when we create a project, we can give it a name and we group them in workspaces. So by default, it's giving you some blank names that are going to work. You can always change these later. So when you first open a project, you'll get taken to what we call the page design screen. So this screen is split into a few different areas. The main part being the central panel here, which is the canvas of the page that you're designing. We can also see an outline view of the controls that you have on your canvas. On the left-hand side of the screen, we have our palette, so you can add lots more controls on and build up your pages as you need. And on the right hand of the screen, we show the properties of the components that you're clicking and selecting on your canvas. And you can see as I select a hyperlink here, it changes the options that I have. And for all these controls, we've got a whole load of settings that you can click on and adjust. And a lot of that stuff we'll cover later on in these videos. Then towards the bottom of the screen here, we can see the pages that I have in this project. So this contact search is the bigger one because that's what we're currently looking at, but I've also got a search results page and a contact details page. So as a quick overview of this project, it's a simple contacts database. So I've got a search page, give me a list of results, click through on the results, and I can see the details. In terms of controlling that flow between my pages, we can bring up what we call the application map diagram, which gives a sort of picture view of the flow between our pages and our server-side processing within this project. So we can see highlighted this contact search page that I'm looking at, and we can see different actions a user can make when they're looking at this page, and we can see how that flows through to perform a search, show my results, get a contact, show the details. And we can see the arrows as to how that flows. So at any point, we can hide and show segments of the page depending on what you're dealing with at any point. So we can hide that away. We can hide our thumbnails away if we want. We can hide our palette away. So we can concentrate on exactly what we're dealing with. And we can also zoom in and out on our canvas view here and see what our page is going to look like on different devices and different screen sizes and orientations. So we can easily see as we're designing what our page is going to look like for our end users. So when you're developing your projects, at any point you can test them to see what it's looking like in a running environment. So up here on our toolbar, we have a play button. Does a local test of the project. So it will prepare the environment, and then it will bring us up a tab where we can try it out. So this is the running application. We can test it out, so we can search, we can see our contacts, and we can click through on one and see the details. And we can test, I think we're searching on surname. So we can see that functionality is working. Okay, and you see with the Studio works around this sort of tab concept. So that run test that we were just doing is opened up in a new tab. And likewise, we can open up our other pages in different tabs. So we can easily flick around and switch between different parts of our project. So in terms of the actual layouts of our pages, we have a concept of a skin that wraps around each individual page. And in this case, our heading here and our links at the side are all controlled by our skin, and that's why they're consistent across the pages. So whether we're on our search page or we're on our details page, we're using that same skin. And if we maybe don't want to see that at the moment, want to concentrate on our page contents, we can hide that away at any point. And over on the right-hand side, if we look at our skin properties, we've got easy ways of changing to different skins. So we've got some example layouts here, but you can obviously create your own and adjust them as required for your applications. And in terms of look and feel, in terms of coloring and the imagery, etc., WebMaker uses a theme concept, and we can easily change and adjust themes for our project as a whole. So we can at any point bring up our theme editor using the icon on our toolbar at the top here. So we've got an example page here which has some summary controls to show us what our themes can look like. And we can look at the base colors that this theme's using and easily make some changes. So maybe, okay, we're not so sure of the green, maybe we want to go sort of bluer color, and we can see the impact that might have. And then we can dive down further if we say, well, actually, it's just these icons here that I want to be a different color. We can see all of the individual colors that are used for the theme, and we can find the appropriate ones and make those adjustments. And straight away we can see the changes being made. Now, in terms of themes, we provide a set of default themes, and then you can create and edit as many of your user themes as you need. And we can easily switch. Say we wanted to go for a darker look rather than the lighter theme. We can preview something different and see what that might be and say, actually, yeah, I like that one. So let's take that one. Let's make it my current theme for this project. Okay, so as well as dealing with individual colors, as we just talked through, we can change images, and we can change font sizes, border radius very easily. So maybe we want our labels to be a bit bigger, and you can see straight away what that would look like. We may want to change the transparency. Should add a bit of a color tinge to that. Lots of options around there, and obviously we can paint the image files as well. So underneath, WebMaker is using SAS to manage the themes, and so if ever you need to make changes to your themes that you can't do through the theme editor, you can always bring up the underlying SAS file and make your changes as you need to within here. And then, as you'd expect with any of these individual components, you can override coloring, styling, colors, etc., using the properties on the right-hand side of page design. So this is the details page in this project for viewing all the information that we have for a contact. And we can use this one to have a look at some of the layout options and some of the approach that you use to build up your pages. So to give us some more space, we can hide our skin information away. And now we're concentrating just on the data on this particular page. And you can see at the moment this is set up in a grid structure with blocks of information. Now our grid gives us a lot of responsive capabilities in terms of the layout, how many columns, where things are positioned, and we can adjust all of that on a per breakpoint basis. So we can see a summary information here for our grid. The default setup is to have one column, but if we got a device that's at least 737 pixels wide, which is our medium breakpoint, then we can switch, and now we can say we have two columns, and that's the view that we're seeing at the moment, hence why this heading here is highlighted. If, for example, we switch to be looking at a phone-type device, we can see now our default style is what's being applied, and we can see we've got that one column layout. So if we wanted more control, so maybe on even bigger devices, we want to say we're going to have 3 columns, we can add another breakpoint override. We can pick which breakpoint we want to deal with. So maybe now we could say, well, extra large. And then we've got another set of information, and we could adjust all of the settings as needed for that device. And then actually, no, we didn't want that. We can easily remove stuff and go back to the other settings that we had. So the other useful feature when we're dealing with grids is we can switch to grid mode by using the option at the top here. And this gives us control over our cells in more detail. So we can select individual cells within our grid. We can play around with their layout, or we can move them around in our grid or resize them. The same as actually are for this breakpoint device that we're looking at, we could say I want my left-hand column to be slightly narrower. And actually I want to switch the personal details with the identification details. And we can just drag and drop and rearrange the layout of our cells in our grid. So this is dealing with the breakpoint that is currently active based on the device that we're looking at. So we could switch to a smaller screen, and then we can adjust the grid layout for that breakpoint override. And then if we want to deal with the individual contents of each grid cell, then we can move out of grid mode, and we're back to our normal view. If we want to add more controls, then we talked earlier about the palette on the left here, and it's just simply a matter of drag and dropping. So we can add some more text boxes. It gives us a mark of, say, exactly where we want to put it. And there's our new control in there. And we can add it onto the outline view as well. It doesn't really matter which one we drop it on. They both apply in the same way. Now we've got a whole load of individual controls here, or we can have containers, and we can have some more complex combined controls. One thing you may want to make use of is an info panel control. So if I drop one over there, and it's giving us a combination of some icons, heading text, some info text that you may want to change, along with some background styling to give us some filtering and transparency effects. And the other thing you can do easily is you're building up layouts. If you maybe wanted to reuse it, this address layout is something useful that you may want to keep again. You can use this option here to add it to a control panel, and then it becomes a control that you can make use of again. So I'm actually going to say this is home address. I can pick an icon. I don't know if we got a home, get the right wording. So we can pick that in and save that. And we can see now in the user control section of our palette, we have this home address, the icon we just added. So now if I'm on this page or any other pages, any other projects that I'm dealing with, I can always access that and say, actually, I want to add another set of address information, and I've got the whole block of controls and exactly the layout that I wanted. So in terms of easily building up blocks of controls, types of layouts, it gives you a very, very quick way of doing that. So the other thing that impacts maybe the layout and things like where our labels are positioned, etc., we can look at the layout defaults for a given project. So I click this option up here under our project properties, and this is setting the default information about where some of this stuff's going to be positioned. So, for example, if I'm looking at my defaults for control labels, which is what some of this stuff is here, so absence, number, dependents, etc., labels for my controls, so the default position is that the labels will be above and to the left of the control, but on anything bigger than our medium-sized breakpoint, we talked about these breakpoints slightly earlier, we're going to be to the left. So that's what I'm seeing here on this device, it's aligned to the left. But I could say, actually, I want it to be right of the control, so I can make that change, save that away, and you can see straight away all of those labels have switched. But that is just the default for my project. I can go through, I can make individual changes either at the label level. So, for example, this car registration, actually, my label properties for that, under my responsive settings, you can see it's showing my inherited information. I say, actually, I want to change it. So for this one, I want it to be above. And you can see that change applied straight away. Or the other option that you may want to do is actually say for this group of controls. So I've got my home address group here, and we can override these settings for anything within it. So we're talking about control labels. So actually I want to say that for this one, the labels go below the control. So you've got a sort of hierarchy of settings. So by default, everything inherits from your project-wide settings. Whenever you need to do some changes, you can do it at a group level or an individual component level. And as with all these settings in our responsive options section, you can add options for all of the breakpoints that are defined. Okay, so we've covered at a high level the options around creating pages, painting fields, and adjusting layout. And I think you can see, click through here, there's a whole load of other options, and some of those will be covered in more detail later on in these videos. So the next slide then is how you get your pages to interact with each other, to pass data around between each other. And that is where the concept of bindings becomes important. So you can see on this properties panel on the right-hand side that we've got two tabs that deal with bindings. We've got the bindings coming into our page and then the bindings going out from our page. The incoming information is dealing with painting of data. So this is what's the value that I'm going to use, where in my data, which we've got a tree representation over here, where do I get the value that I'm going to use to populate this field? And we can see as we click round on these different fields, the bindings updates, and we can see the mapping of which value it's going to use. So, for example, the car registration is coming from the car registration value in our data. So a lot of this stuff will get populated automatically for you as you create pages, whether that be from the palette or from data sources such as databases, web services calls, etc. But you can easily change them here by just dragging and dropping the appropriate entry. So then the second bindings tab here, the outgoing bindings, is about where the values from this field are going to go when the page is saved, when the information is submitted to the server. So on this screen, we see multiple options in a sort of accordion type control here, and these tie into the actions that can come out from our page. Now, if we go back to looking at our application map diagram that we talked about earlier, we can see that from this contact details page, which is what we're currently looking at, we have actions called cancel, insert contact, and update contact. So that is why we've got these three options on our bindings tab, because if we wanted to, we can bind the values on these fields into different places for each of these actions. So in this scenario, for this application, which is making use of some web service calls, we can see for the update contact, the value is going into our update contact request data structure. For the insert contact action, the data structure is actually create contact request. And for cancel, we haven't got a binding because we're not interested in the data because I'm cancelling out. So if I went to create contact, change my mind, cancel out, we're just discarding the information. Now this data and these data structures that we see here tie into then our server-side processing, which is what is achieved by the controllers that we can see on our diagram here. So in this case, we insert and update both of those actions, submit the information to a save contact controller. So we can see the details and the rules that are going to be performed in that controller by opening up either from the diagram, or you can see we have our links on the bindings tab directly to say, show me the rules that are going to go and deal with this data. So in either case, we're opening up a new tab in our studio, and this is our rules view for configuring the server-side processing for our XML rules controllers. So in this case, we can see that incoming data structure. So this is the same view of information as we had here when we were looking at our bindings. And in the middle section, the main part here is the rules that are going to be processed. And we can just drop one of these out to have a quick look at the way these work. And we can see that each rule is two parts, so an if with a set of conditions, and then a then with a set of actions. So, for example, this rule here is checking that the action, update contact, so we've got that checked because from our diagram, we see there's actually two actions coming into this controller, so we want to say which one was it that was performed. We're again going to also check, have I got my data structure, my update contact request in this scenario, and then I'm going to go and do something. In this case, invoke a service, call the web service, get it to update the information. So we can see then the second rule here, which is working in a very similar way, checking the action. In this case, insert contact, and we can see again checking for the data. And we can see there that where there's a match. So in this case, here's an example of our incoming data for create contact request. So it matches, we're okay, we'll carry on. And like with any of these places, we can see the matching information. So when you're designing these rules, there's a whole load of built-in actions that you can use for manipulating the data, editing it, copying it, comparing it, transforming, caching information, as well as more complex things, so accessing databases. We've talked here about using invoke service to call external web services for some transformations. And there's also options for getting out into your own custom Java code. So to see all of this in action, we showed earlier the running application. So we can go back to that if I run it again. So say I do a search here, contact with S in the surname, and we've got some data back. We can use the debugger to see what's happened to the data at every stage through that transaction of performing our search, tie that into our rules, see which rules fired, and see exactly what happened on our server. So, as an example then, for this search, we were on our contact search page. We performed a search context action, which will have shown our search results page. In this case, it's a partial page and it's been embedded into the existing page rather than a whole new page. So if we look here, we can see search results. This is our controller. We can see the incoming information. We can see the action. We can see the search. So I entered just the S character there. So we can see all that information coming in. We can then look at our rules and we can check which one's fired. Yes, the conditions on this rule was successful. So the rule's been fired. It's called external service. As you can see with the green colouring here, indicates our external calls. So this was a call to the external web service. In this case, it was sent out a SOAP message. We've got some data back. We can see that here. We can see that then that information flowed back into the controller, went through some more rules, and right at the end, we can see our HTML that's been sent out. At any point, we can clear out our logs, go back, perform a new transaction to say we want to view a contact here. We can always go back to our debugger, refresh. In this case, we can see our get contact process. And in the same way, we can drop down, see all the details of our rules, see what's happened. And if, say, something was slightly didn't do what we wanted, we can go easily from our logs into our rules view, right to the relevant point, and then adjust it as required. So there's a lot of power in terms of the rules processing and in terms of the functionality that you can achieve. But it's all built in a very simple drag and drop, easily add, adjust, delete, or whatever you're processing. So simple to do, simple to create, but there's a lot of power behind it that can be used. But there is also an option for using Java controllers itself. So far we've been talking about XML rules controllers. You can also make use of Java controllers if you do want to go straight out and use the Java code directly. So these can be added onto your diagram just by drag and drop. Okay, so we're having an overview here of main points of the WebMaker Studio. We've built some pages, we've looked at theming, very quickly looked at some layout options, and we've implemented some server rules. So we're happy, we've done some run tests, and we're happy our application's working kind of how we want it to. So the final step then is to actually get it out and publish on a server of your choice. So on our menu at the top here, we can see we have a publish option, which gives us a few different settings. So we can choose, if we want to export the web app resources. So if I just want to take my pages, just as static pages, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and use them however I choose, I can use that option. Or I can go in and configure a complete publication environment if I want to get my whole application. So I can go in and I can create one of these and say, as an example, I want to get a WAR file, a Java Web Application Archive file that I can deploy on my server. So I can just put in a few details here. And I can configure the details for my project to make sure that when I export it, it runs in exactly the way I required, talks to the servers that I need to do, has the required logging settings, optimization settings. There's a whole load of details that can be configured for each publication environment. And then I can just run those, and it will give me my WAR file to do with as I need in this scenario. Other options you could use is to publish directly into a Tomcat server or to other servers that have the appropriate management applications running. So WebMaker also provides a team server component which you can use if you've got a group of people who want to work on individual projects. We can see the options here of we can connect to a team server, we can share our projects, and we can update them, check in, check out projects, let multiple people work on them. And then also with that, we get a consistent version history, and we'll be able to click through, see our version, see what's changed between check-ins, maybe roll back if you don't want to keep one of the versions. And there's a whole load of options there to make it easy for multiple people to work on your projects.
Thanks, Gerard. You also have a template with some cool translucent scrolling effects and animations. Can we have a look at some of those features in a bit more detail?
So this page is an example of the infinite base template that we have available, which is giving you an example of a single page website where you scroll down to see more sections and more information. So at any point when you're looking at pages within WebMaker, you can preview them to see what they'll look like when they're running. So you can see there the animation effect on the text. We can see some of the features of the built-in controls within WebMaker. So our menu at the top collapses down as we scroll. We can see some of the text that slides in as we get down to them. We've got collapsible sections that we can open up. And we've got forms and all the interactive information. We can click on our menus to get to relevant parts of the page with nice animated scrolling. So this, like other applications or whatever you build, has the responsive capabilities. But so we can view it and see what the page looks like in different devices, and we can make use of the tools that our web browsers provide. So, for example, say we wanted to look at an iPhone device. So we can see that menu is switched to the standard hamburger option where we can click about, just scroll down. This section where these blocks were horizontal with the bigger devices, you can see here they've wrapped underneath. Same with our contacts information. Same with these sections where the text now goes below the images rather than by the side. And you can see that things respond as you adjust the size, and we get a nice responsive looking page. As we're designing our pages here, we can also use these options to say what's it going to look like in these different devices. Can I zoom in? Can I adjust the layout for each of them? And is it giving us the look that we want to achieve? So in terms of the approach used to configure some of these settings, if we look at maybe this section here as an example where we've got our three groups here, and we can see on our outline view that we have a grid. Inside each cell we've got info panel controls, and on our grid layout we can say we're switching from having one column with 3 rows to 3 columns and 1 row based on the size of our output device that we're rendering on. And we can easily use grid mode as well if we want more control. Say we easily wanted to add another row in to maybe give some more info panels, we could do that here. So we see now we've got 3 blank cells. We could maybe add one into one of those empty cells. And then we could say so by default we're still only showing 3 rows on the small devices, so we can see with the content where we will see, and this highlighted content won't be visible at this breakpoint device. Breakpoint size at the moment, but we could add a row in for this one. By default it's giving us an empty cell because that was the first one, but we can rearrange to say we want that content to be visible on these smaller devices, and we can switch back to our larger one, and we've still got the layout exactly as we had it with that cell in the middle of the overall grid. one thing we see if we bring back our skin section here is our Navbar control here with search icons, some links for different sections of the page, and obviously some kind of logo. Again, that is an example control that's on our palette. So if we wanted to add that to one of our pages, we could very easily drag it on from here and configure it. So if an example, we could delete that out. So we're saying, oh, skin nav doesn't have that content. We could easily drag that on. And you see that gives us all of that information in one go. And we can then fine-tune it so we may not want products, about, and contacts to be the options, or maybe we need an additional option on there. And we can see we've got events defined that handle those clicks of those options. So in this case, we can say, this is just some example events. So it's saying, what's the value of the menu? So which option did you click on? Can I find somewhere on my page? If so, I'm going to scroll to it. If not, then I'm going to show a helper message. So in a real application, you would probably decide, well, which approach are you going to use, and put in the appropriate event and the appropriate settings that you need. So as an example, we could add a section to the bottom of our page here. Say we had another panel. We could add another info panel at the bottom. And if we called that support, save those changes, we can data our preview, so we see we've got the option here. And if I click on that now, it's taking me down as far as it can to that support panel that I've just added. So one of the other things that's nice about this example is we've got some animation text sliding in, and that's very easy to achieve. So on our containers here, we've got some animated groups. So say we wanted the text to slide in from the left in our support panel, we could drag that group in, and we could put whatever we want inside there. So we've got an example of some text, but maybe we wanted all of our content to go in there. So we can see either on that view or on our layout view the structure. So this content is now within our animated group. We can turn on the layout container highlighting to easily see those groupings on here. You can see the nested structures of our layout of our page. Quite cool. So now if we were to click down to that support, and we can see all that information slid in nicely at the bottom when we got down to that content. In terms of the structures of this info panel, what content is in, icons, so we could easily change this icon if we wanted to have something different. In terms of alignment, we've got this content centered, but we can easily adjust that as required. If we wanted to make the icon bigger, we can adjust the styling for it. So in this case, because these are font icons, we can increase our text size.
That's great, Gerard. Amazing. Thank you. I hope that's been useful for everyone. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon. Take care.